The subway doors closed with a hiss as Michael Hayes observed a young man sprawled across two seats, refusing to move for an elderly woman carrying groceries. Nobody said a word. The air inside the car felt charged with tension. "Excuse me, would you mind if I sat down?" the gray-haired woman asked softly, gripping her canvas tote. The man, early 20s with backward baseball cap, didn't look up from his phone. "Train's full, lady. Gotta claim your spot early." He stretched his legs wider across the empty seat. The other passengers averted their eyes. A businessman adjusted his glasses and stared at the floor. A teenage girl thumbed her phone nervously. The woman said nothing, swaying as the train curved. Her arms hugged the grocery bag tighter, apples, bread, and strawberry preserves visible inside. She'd risen early for the market, a Monday ritual since retirement. When the subway jolted around a bend, she staggered slightly, her shoulder brushing against the young man's arm. "Don't touch me, hag," he snapped. Heads turned briefly before quickly looking away. The woman's face flushed with embarrassment. The man leaned forward, emboldened by the silence. "Seriously, y'all see this? Can't even ride in peace without someone invading my space." Nobody responded. The teenage girl's fingers hovered over her phone camera, but never pressed record. "What's in the bag, Grandma? Something worth fighting over." He chuckled, flicking the tote strap. "Please don't," the woman whispered, her voice barely audible above the train's rumble. He ignored her, grabbing the bottom of the bag and tilting it. One apple fell, then another, rolling under seats. The preserves jar shifted but remained intact. She gasped softly and bent down, steadying herself to retrieve the fruit. That's when he struck, a deliberate elbow under her collarbone. Not a punch, but forceful enough to send her stumbling backward. Her spine hit the metal doorframe with a dull thud. The impact wasn't loud, but the silence that followed was deafening. A boy in a puffer jacket opened his mouth, then closed it. An older woman covered her lips with her scarf. The teenage girl took one step forward, then retreated. The thug leaned back, smirking. Lesson of the day: don't lean on strangers. Still, nobody spoke. But from across the car, Michael Hayes slowly lifted his head. Michael had been standing silently, one hand gripping the overhead bar, the other in his jacket pocket. At 54, his face carried the weathered lines of someone who'd seen the worst of humanity and still chose to believe in its best. His military short hair had grayed at the temples, but his posture remained marine straight. 22 years in force recon had taught him to observe before acting. His worn leather jacket and faded jeans disguised a coiled readiness underneath. He'd watched the entire interaction, cataloging details most passengers missed. The woman's wedding ring, worn thin with decades, the thug's nervous glances at his own reflection, the way the other passengers calculated their personal risk. As the train entered the tunnel, darkness briefly swept through the car. When light returned, Michael was already moving. Not rushing, not pushing, just deliberate steps toward an inevitable confrontation. His wife's eyes followed him, knowing exactly what would happen next. Michael navigated through the crowd without touching anyone. He moved with quiet precision past a mother clutching her child, past a college student gripping his backpack tighter, past a woman frozen with her phone midair. The thug didn't notice him approaching, too busy performing for his audience. You see, this is what happens when people forget they ain't special. Everyone thinks they deserve a seat just cause they're old. No one responded. A teenage boy lowered his phone and stared at the floor. The elderly woman pushed herself upright, steadying herself on a pole. Her shoulders sagged with humiliation. Then came Michael's voice, deep and controlled, quiet as a razor sliding from its sheath. "Pick it up." The thug blinked, confused, then turned. Michael stood just 2 feet behind him, closer now, close enough that the air between them seemed to thin. "What?" the thug barked. Michael didn't blink. "The apple. Pick it up and apologize." A ripple went through the car. Someone hit record. The thug laughed nervously, then louder. "Oh man, you serious? Who are you supposed to be? Her husband? Her bodyguard?" He leaned back, addressing the crowd. "We got a whole hero situation here, huh?" Michael said nothing. He took one more step forward. The thug stood up, trying to reassert control, tilting his chin to maintain height. "What's your problem, old man?" Michael's voice was like gravel dragged across stone. "She was hurt. You did it. Now fix it." There was no threat, no growl, just a statement as plain as gravity itself. The thug glanced around, but this time no one looked away. "Not anymore." He rolled his shoulders, trying to puff up. "Back off. I'm warning you." Michael tilted his head slightly. "I've already warned you." The tension had plateaued. "Heavy, alive." Then a sharp voice rang out. "Yo, you need help, man?" It came from another young man 2 rows down, built heavier. Jacket zipped to the chin, earbuds out now. The first thug smiled wider. "See? Now what?" Michael slowly scanned the second man, then returned to first. The elderly woman clutched her bag tighter. This wasn't just about a shove anymore. It wasn't about fruit or pride. It was the moment where a line was drawn, and Michael Hayes had already stepped over it. The thug squared his shoulders. "You got a problem. 'Cause if you do, you should know I don't back down for nobody." Michael didn't answer. He just stood there, waiting. My last chance to what? Pick up some fruit for Granny. The thug reached forward, palm open, and pushed Michael's chest. Michael stepped back half an inch. Not because he had to, but because he let the pressure roll through him like wind past a tree. The thug pushed again, harder this time. "You don't want this, old man. Trust me." Michael looked over his shoulder at the elderly woman. "Are you hurt?" he asked. She nodded slightly. A little. Something in Michael's gaze changed. The softness vanished, replaced by something colder. Not anger, not rage. Focus. He took one step forward. The thug immediately shoved again, but this time Michael caught his wrist midair. Not roughly, not violently, just enough to stop it. The man's arm hit what felt like steel. He blinked and tried to yank free, but Michael's grip didn't tighten. It didn't need to. "I warned you," Michael said quietly. The second thug shifted uneasily. He looked toward a third man seated halfway down the car, who hadn't moved yet. His eyes darted between the phones of passengers and Michael. The weight in the train car had completely shifted. This wasn't entertainment anymore. This was judgment. Quiet, measured, and irreversible. The first thug finally yanked his arm free and stepped back. "This guy's crazy. Just walk away, man." But Michael didn't move. He didn't posture. He didn't threaten. He just waited in that silence that made even subway wheels feel muffled. People started putting their phones down, not out of boredom, but reverence. Someone whispered, "He hasn't even hit anyone." The thug glanced at his friend. "Let's go, man." But lines had already been crossed, and Michael hadn't moved a muscle. This wasn't where fists flew. This was where a man made a decision, and another man had to live with it. The thug forced a laugh. "What now? You're gonna pull a weapon out of that jacket." Michael didn't move. "You ain't even got a badge. You ain't a cop. You ain't nothing." Michael tilted his head. "I'm someone who won't let this slide." Those words, no louder than a whisper, hit harder than any fist. The thug lunged forward, swinging wildly. Michael sidestepped with minimal movement, redirecting the man's momentum. The attacker stumbled forward, catching himself on a pole. The second thug moved in from the side. "You think we're scared of you?" Michael turned to face him fully. His gaze settled and didn't move. "You should be." A few passengers shivered. It wasn't the words, but how he said them, like facts from a ledger. The second man faltered, then halted his advance. The first thug picked up the bruised apple from the floor with 2 fingers, as if contaminated. He held it toward the elderly woman, but as she reached for it, he deliberately dropped it. The glass jar of preserves finally slipped loose, cracking on impact. "Oops," he said with mock surprise. "Slip." Michael looked down at the broken jar. Strawberry preserves smeared across the metal floor like blood at a crime scene. He looked back up. "Do you have a mother?" Michael asked gently. The thug hesitated. "What? A sister? What's that got to do with?" Michael leaned in, eyes burning low. "Then you should know," he said. "This is where you stop." The thug tried to hold ground, but his confidence wavered. The swagger in his stance faded into fear. From a dark corner where the lighting flickered near the junction between cars, a fourth man rose unnoticed. Hoodie up, hands deep in his jacket. He'd been watching, waiting. As Michael turned toward the elderly woman, the man stepped forward. In his right hand, a short, thick baton. Plastic, but reinforced. He gripped it low and swung. The baton arced through the air and cracked against the side of Michael's skull above the ear. The sound wasn't sharp but thick, a dull, heavy thump. Michael's knees buckled instantly. His right shoulder slammed into a steel pole. His body folded sideways and hit the floor hard, his head rebounding on metal. The elderly woman screamed. Several people shouted. Someone dropped their phone. The thug with the baton stood over Michael, breathing heavily. His face wasn't cocky but blank cold, like this was just a job. Michael didn't move. For the first time, the car saw him still. The thug with the baton took a step back, wiping his forehead. He scanned the crowd as if to say, "See? That's all it takes." Someone muttered, "Did he just kill him?" Another voice, trembling, "No, he's breathing." The first thug blinked hard, told you he was just a poser. The elderly woman dropped to her knees beside Michael. Michael, look at me." "Nothing." Her voice cracked. "Please." And then a breath, shallow but clear. Michael's eyes opened, not wide, just enough to show he was still in a fight. He blinked once, twice. His fingers flexed against the dirty subway floor. The thug raised the baton again. "Don't," the woman said sharply, rising to her feet. Her voice wasn't strong, but fierce in its clarity. The man sneered, "Stay out of it, lady." That's when Michael's leg shifted, his elbow planted. He began to push himself up. Michael rose slowly, deliberately, like a man who had fallen many times before and always got back up. Blood streaked down his right temple, soaking his collar. The baton-wielding thug hesitated. Everything about Michael's body language said, "Now it's my turn." The air inside the subway car changed. Not louder, not panicked, but charged. Michael moved with efficient precision. He stepped inside the baton swing radius, caught the man's wrist mid-strike, and twisted. The weapon clattered to the floor. The thug tried to yank his arm back, but Michael placed a palm on his chest and shoved. Not hard, but precise. The man slammed into a metal pole and dropped to one knee. Michael turned toward the first thug. Their eyes locked. The younger man froze, then panicked, turning to run. But the doors were still closed, the tunnel dark outside. He threw a desperate punch that never landed. Michael pivoted sideways, hooked his forearm around the man's elbow and pulled. A crack echoed through the car. The thug screamed, clutching his arm. The second thug charged like a linebacker. Michael sidestepped. The man tripped over his fallen friend and slammed chest first into a bench seat. The baton man rose again, rage in his eyes. He swung wildly. Michael ducked under and delivered a short-range elbow to the gut. The man dropped like a bag of wet cement. The train rumbled beneath as if it too had witnessed something ancient. Michael stood still, one hand against the wall for balance. Blood trailed down his temple, but his eyes remained sharp, focused. Passengers began to move, not away, but closer. "He just took out 4 guys, whispered a young man. "Didn't even throw a punch till he had to," murmured a woman. Michael walked back to the elderly woman and picked up her crushed tote bag. Only one apple remained. He handed it to her gently. Her hand trembled as she took it. No one clapped. No one cheered. But everyone felt it. Something important had happened. Something none of them would forget. 3 men lay groaning on the ground. The 4th remained motionless, defeated. The train began to slow, approaching the next station. Still, no one moved or spoke. An old man in the back whispered, "Thank you." The doors opened, spilling morning light onto the platform. Michael placed his hand gently behind the elderly woman's back and guided her forward. People parted not out of fear, but respect. They walked up the stairwell into the bustling city. Outside, life continued. Car horns, street chatter, pigeons scuffling over crumbs. No one recognized them. No one knew what had happened below. But for those who witnessed it, nothing would be the same. They'd seen what courage looked like. Not loud or boastful, but quiet, determined, and unwavering. It makes you think, how many heroes walk among us unnoticed? What would you do if faced with injustice? Stay silent or stand up. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs courage today. Have you ever witnessed someone stand up when others wouldn't? Tell us in the comments below. Sometimes the most powerful moments happen when one person simply says, "Enough